So I had to bowl this out a little bit to get it out here enough to swing this. But that's basically what you do. You slowly snug that down and you rotate this around. And you keep snugging that. And that roller cutter will cut through the brake line, fuel line, whatever you're making. Most of my drag racing cars and stuff I've worked on, I made all my own brake lines, made my own this, that, and the other. You pay so damn much money for pre-bent stuff. Well, you can buy it in sections. You can buy it through auto parts stores. You can order it. Quarter line, 3/8 line, whatever size you want to work with. And get a tubing bender. Bend them, form them the shape you need them on your own. Learn how to use a tubing bender. Then after you cut line, use a flaring kit. I've got a tube flaring kit. And you put the collar on first, before you flare it, obviously, because it flares out the fuel line. And then you can use those, and they're approved, too, from tech inspection at drag strips and stuff. Your fuel lines, you got to have proper screw down, crimp style connections. It's really hard to hold the phone and do this, too. So let me get back out of this till I sever this entirely. I need both hands. And there it came. Nice, good, basically clean cut. Squirted a little bit of fuel. Ooh, I'm getting a whiff of it for sure. Need to get a shop towel and put on there and absorb some of this crap out of here because there's gas right there. So it isn't flared, but this is enough. This is a 1/2 inch or so sticking up. It's enough for me to push on line and clamp it real good and firm. So, I don't have any leaking. I could push a flaring tool down in there a little bit. I might, since this is quarter and I'm going into 3/8. It would be better to flare that just a bit. So I think I will get my flaring tool and flare this just a bit so it'll fit tighter when I go to clamp down on this. I'm always of the mindset, why pay someone else to do something you can do yourself? That's why instead of buying pre-bent fuel line, pre-bent brake lines, man, I try to do it all, make everything myself. And I encourage anybody that's tight on a budget, which I have always been, I always treated things like that my whole life, even though I've done all right making a living. I'm still doing stuff as cheap as I can always do it. So, know when you're looking at my videos and stuff, you're getting the best advice for saving you the most maximum amount of money that, I always recommend. To try and do as much yourself as you can. Now, I get a kick out of, I was listening to Dave Ramsey the other day, who's a financial advisor, has a radio talk show. He's helped a lot of people with their 401ks, their retirement plans, and he's a very smart, intelligent guy with money. And I like his show. I like his advice on stuff. And he has a few different people substitute with him when he goes on vacations or takes. So it was actually a substitute guy that was talking to a customer, and he was saying, well, what's your car worth? When the guy was saying, he's looking to have to spend $6,000. They were quoting him at this tranny shop in Colorado, I think it was Denver, and $6,500 actually, I think it was, to rebuild his transmission. He's like, holy cow, that seems like a lot. And it did to me too. That seems like too much. But one of the questions Ramsey's spokesperson said is, well, what's the car worth? I'm always so dumbfounded when people worry about what a car's worth is. To me, it's a machine. When you buy a car, you're buying its interior, its rolling chassis, its suspension, its differentials, its engine, its transmission, everything in all these parts to get your body from one place to the next. Why the hell does it matter what the car's value is? I walk through junkyards all the time, and I'm dumbfounded by how easily people give up on cars that could be salvaged and put back on the road. Oh, I need to get a new car. It needs a transmission, or the engine's gone south. Who the hell cares? Take it to a tranny shop and have the thing rebuilt. $3-4 grand, $2 grand, $3-4 grand, whatever. That's a hell of a lot cheaper when you look at the price of cars nowadays. 40 grand, 50, 60, 70 grand for your basic, get you transportation around domestic cars. I'm sorry, but when you can buy something for a couple $100, put a little bit of elbow grease into it, or even if you have to do everything as far as taking it to a shop, it's cheaper to get an old car and keep it going, than to dump a ton of money, sign on the dotted line, and you're sitting there forking out, what, $400, $500, $600 a month. Because I'm sorry, 40 grand is a hell of a lot more than paying $4 grand to rebuild a tranny, or drop a new engine in, or any of that. And I'm telling you, private shops like the business. Give shops business if you can't do the work yourself. Take an old car. These babies, this is a 95. It just turned 2023. This puppy now, that one is now 30 years old. And I've got two 95s, almost 30 years old, 28 now instead of 27. If you can find a 20, 30-year-old car, fix it. Buy it, fix it, and keep it going. It's a whole lot cheaper. Now I have all these V8s I'm driving around all the time. Last year with the political climate we have and all this bullshit, the price of everything going crazy through the sky, I said, you know what, I'd like to have a little runaround car. So I'm going to get like 40 miles a gallon, just some little old car. Okay, here's Hippo sitting outside. And last year, or it's been a year and a half since I bought this little baby. I paid $1,800 for this 1992 Toyota Corolla. And it's a manual transmission. Manual windows, no air conditioning, manual seats. This puppy is just the funnest little scoot to drive around. This is what I run errands in. And these only came with 13-inch wheels. So I researched, well, okay, what has 4x100 bolt patterns? Well, I found out the little Chevy Sonic, yeah, I think it was a Chevy Sonics, also have 4x100. And a guy on Craigslist threw these wheels up. They came off a Chevy Craigslist. So I got Chevy wheels on a Toyota. There's the bow tie symbol on my little Toyota Tercel. Man, I'm telling you, I love this little car. I've had to do some things to it, replace the CV joint axles and stuff like that. These are also known, this little 3-valve engine, 1500. They're known to have the valve guide seals fail. So they'll smoke when they're cold until they warm up. And I did the valve guide seals. It's not that hard to do. There's guys on the internet show how to do that too, with taking out the spark plug, shoving rope in there, rotate the engine so the valves can't fall down on the engine, and rotate so the piston comes up hard on the rope. And then you can take off the whole rockers, the cam, and all that stuff, and replace the valve guide seals. And I did that. And see, there's my WJ. Doesn't that look great? 2.5-inch lift. But you see what I'm talking about. If you pivoted that back wheel any farther forward, it would look dumb. When I think Jeeps or almost any vehicle gets lifted too high, they just don't look right. 245, 75, 16s on a 2.5-inch lift, spring lift, on a WJ is freaking beautiful. I love the way it looks. Right height. My black one's the same height. My old Hippo here. He's an ugly beast, but he had the guts and parts and shit I needed out of it. So fix stuff. Fix it yourself. I gotta roll this baby back in, get the cam sensor out of it. I totally forgot about it. It's an ugly thing. But hey, it had parts. Cool. So, stay tuned. It's all fun, man. It's all fun. So I guess I got to give a little bit more detail as far as how you use a flaring tool. You got to go down like 1/8 of an inch below the top of the metal, because that's what's going to get spread out and laid over into this gap. So I'm only going to go up to 3/8 this size. From this size, I want to flare it out at least up to this size, because this tube is, I want this to be close to fitting around it. Because still you can only compress down a fuel line so far. If you haven't got something that will squeeze onto good enough, I would have to do a step up. Because the lip that was up here was perfect to just barely fit in here and shove on the fuel line and put a hose clamp over top of it. So that's got a nice indentation in the fuel line now on the inside, sealing it well. So I've got to have something that will do kind of the same thing down here. So you go, say 1/8 of an inch below that. You put it around it and you clamp this down real good. And it's got these teeth in the insides because you want it to hold real firm on that tubing. Because once I shove in, the flare tool, oh, this is the wrong one. This is the right one here. So I'm going to shove that in, and then I'm going to put the clamp. This is going to slide over the whole thing. I'm going to have to fish around the from the other side, the wing nut. You have to fish around it, get this on over top of it, pulling down, and then you run the screw down to push this down on the flaring bit, and that will flare out the tubing. But you got to make sure it's clamped real good and hard so it won't slip on the tubing. So I'm gonna pop off the phone again here and get this done. Okay, it's been some years since I used this doggone thing. I was explaining it wrong to use these right off the bat. When you want to flare it, you don't use these. These are for fitting your compression fittings. If I'm just going to flare it, then you just use the tip of this that's sharp to flare it out. Because dopey me, I was tightening on it and broke one of my flares. I'm like, wait a minute, God, it's been long since I've used this. Long time. I used to use it all the time when I was doing more hot rod and stuff. So yeah, I just want to spread it out. And that's just the tip of this, the V, cone point tip of this. Slide it around there and tighten this baby down. It's got this rod, you can slide in and out one side. I don't have a lot of cranking room once I'm on there, so I just crank, pull it out, put it back in, crank, flare that out. I moved it down to a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. I'm getting onto the bend of the tube, so it's not really good. I can't go much wider than that, so I'm just going to flare this and get her done. Okay, I flared it out. It left a bit of a sharp edge on that tube, so I had to grab my little file here, take out the sharp edges, because I don't want it cutting through this tubing. Fuel line's tough, because if you look at fuel line, it's got the nylon's inner webbing. You got to have that. Vacuum line does not have that stuff. It's just rubber. So you should never use vacuum line as fuel line. So, but even though it's fuel line and it's tougher, you can still cut through it. And I've seen it happen before. So since that flare had some rough edge on it, I filed it around to make it with my finger no rough edge all the way around it before I shoved the tube on. And I thought it'd be nice. What the hell is that, a smoke detector somewhere? Huh. I'll be damned, I didn't take the other one in here. I tried to use this smaller hose clamp, but turning it, and this is a 6mm, it's more like for my motorcycles, it started skipping teeth, because you can't put that much force on them before it started skipping teeth. Well, so I put this bigger one on it, and man, I got that baby just as tight as you can get it without it starting to skip teeth on the hose clamp. So I'm going to be watching and keep a real careful eye on this when I go to power this up. It's going to run a lot before it ever actually dries. So I'm going to keep an eye on this thing as it's running and make sure that's sealed. Later I may still redo all this and cut this further back to flare it, put a proper threaded one on, and only have any kind of wrist connection up here. Because you're close to the exhaust under here, and I don't want gas shooting on the dang exhaust. I mean, it's several inches away, but still, I wouldn't want this to start squirting gas. So I'm going to keep a good close eye on it when I run it for quite a bit before ever driving it.